at the Missoula Fire Sciences Laboratory. So a lot of my work focuses on leveraging climate information um, to basically assess historical and predict forecasted fire danger conditions, specifically for wildfire decision making. Uh, we uh, we have several systems in the U.S. that kind of fit into a continuum of fire management decision making. Things like what do we do before the season for preseason planning, hazardous fuels management, which are supported by systems like the Wildfire Investment Planning System and the Interagency Fuels Treatment Decision Support System. What we're going to kind of focus on today is more about the middle. So how do we leverage these fire danger systems for preparedness and response? And everywhere possible, I'm going to make sure that we tie it back to the goal here of talking about soil moisture products, monitoring, mapping, and places where those things can fit in. Specifically, in these preparedness and response decision-making realms, we're talking about making decisions like staffing, resource allocation, severity, funding severity, which means bringing on additional resources for places that are experiencing unusual conditions, all the way out to wildfire response. And we'll talk about um, why all of this stuff that we talk about for the rest of the day is incredibly important, both for situational awareness and risk management tool, risk management and application. So essentially, this middle piece of preparedness and response is supported by the National Fire Danger Rating System, and we have different ways of delivering that information, both spatially. At leveraging point source weather data from raw stations and then gridded weather, which we'll all talk about. And but on a bit at a more broader note, the mapping wildfire hazard or danger is really about how do we combine information together to provide metrics that can be used for decision making. So our system and all the other global systems combine information about fuels, weather, and topography into an index of fire activity. So they all work a little bit different, but their ultimate goal is to be data condensers, to take lots of information, pipe, funnel it together, have an index that can anchor to a planning document that says when this index goes above this value, we're going to do something different, so that we're using science and data and science to actually support decision making. One of the challenges with the National Fire Danger Rating System is it had languished for a really long time without any substantial improvements. So over the last 5 years, we have been revising that system, including new science, and also working on the ways that we distribute the information to the user so that we can more appropriately get that information into the people's hands that need it. So our new National Fire Danger Rating System it's very similar to the old one, but basically the way that they were designed in the beginning is that you could pull pieces out and pull and plug new pieces in while keeping the general structure of the system the same. Specifically, we removed all of the old dead fuel moisture modeling that was in the system and inserted the Nelson model. It's really kind of what I call the Nelson Carlson model, because J.D. Carlson, one of your local professors there, has been instrumental over the years in making sure that we really understand and can apply the science for these dead fuel moisture models that are integral to the system, and then also a live fuel moisture model based on the growing season index that allows us to link more to the physiology, which is a direct input and needs better information about soil moisture. So one of the things we kept is the input of the Keach-Barham Drought Index for drought fuel loading, such that it allows us to have a hook for additional or future drought indices so that they can better help with the rating system. But the one thing that was always missing from the old system is the actual application. Like focusing on the fact that this is a decision support tool, and how do we actually use it in planning, and then how do we implement it in real time so we can actually leverage that information better. One of the things that we're working on now is an improvement to the live fuel moisture model. So this is just one example of modeled and measured live fuel moisture for Southern California for chamise. So the old live fuel moisture model in NFDRS was terrible, and we're trying to really leverage phenological models as well as weather information to model and be able to map those conditions out across landscapes. So fire danger rating systems are a decision support system, and those systems have basically 5 components. They have the system itself, the modeling system. So in our case, the National Fire Danger Rating System, but they have a knowledge engine, which basically tells us how we apply that information to decision making. So ours are called fire danger operating plans. All over the country, people have implemented these plans for decision making, and we work directly with units to help do that. The other 2 pieces, though, are how do we manage the data and provide a user interface. So the data management systems we have operationally are WIMS, the Weather Information Management System. So real-time telemetry weather information goes into WIMS. The indices are produced through a user interface and provided to the human user for decision making. But we're also working on new applications of delivering fire danger information. One of them is called Wildfire Safe. Wildfire Safe is a SAFE stands for the Situational Assessment of the Fire Environment. So it's a way for us to take fire location, fire occurrence information, and summarize metrics for that fire for decision making. So the app actually has 3 pieces. It has metrics that it provides about the fire environment. So how for every fire in the country, as soon as it's reported, we provide a quantification of the forecast and the fuels, weather, value, topography, values at risk, and even some of the more locally relevant COVID conditions for under current conditions. So, but it has a real-time automation piece that takes fire reporting from Irwin through this NIFC open data service and allows us to have access to fire locations within 5 minutes of them being reported. So once a fire is reported, the app goes and grabs all of the metrics, including some, well, I'll describe them in a second, but provides all the metrics through a user interface. That user interface is a web and mobile app. So the actual web and mobile app provides a mapping interface and a dashboard, so it can summarize multiple fires at once for local decision making at a unit level or at a regional or even and national level. So it has different scales for different users, all the way down to the individual incident where we can provide perimeter information from our infrared mapping, MODIS and VIIRS active fire detects, and then the mobile app itself. The same app works on a phone. It installs like an app, but it's not truly an app, and in the sense that you have to install it through the App Store or Google Play, but it works to provide real-time information about each fire. So a responder that's going to a specific fire can open that fire up. Before they even get there, they can see what kind of fuel it's burning in, what's the terrain like, what's the drought condition, what's the relative NDVI, and then have a way to feedback fire behavior observations back into a bigger picture. So essentially it provides fuels, weather, topography. So the weather forecast is a severe fire danger index, which I'll talk about in a minute. Some terrain summaries and drought indices from the U.S. Drought Monitor, a relative NDVI from the NESDIS, and then values at risk. So it summarizes the potentially impacted number of buildings and people and the communities at risk. So if we just look at some examples of what they look like, this is just the application with the Drought Monitor background provided as a resource. So you can see all the active fires burning in the country, and then you can see the drought conditions. So you can turn layers on and off just like you can with any other application. But a couple of the relevant ones that I think would be interesting are the relative NDVI and the Drought Monitor. So relative NDVI we compute using the smoothed NDVI from the Vegetation Health Index product and normalizing it based on the historical maximum. to provide a wall-to-wall, weekly updated relative NDVI. The important thing, though, is not necessarily what's there, but what could be there. So as a delivery mechanism, we can provide spatial data and summarize spatial data fire by fire to provide that information directly to decision makers. So one of the unique pieces of it is a severe fire danger index. The severe fire danger index is something we've been working on that is really a combination of two of our indices from the U.S. National Fire Danger Rating System, the energy release component and the burning index. So the energy release component, or ERC, is really just a metric of how hot and dry it is. And once we normalize that to a percentile, we can tell you our conditions drier than normal. And it essentially functions like a drought index. But we can combine that with the burning index, which has a direct wind speed input. So the combination of these two things tell us a lot about the fire environment. And if we can normalize them in a way and categorize them in a way that they can be used in decision making, then we can characterize how is today different than yesterday, much better than we've been able to do in the past. So the severe fire danger index is an index that's computed from the ERC and BI percentiles. So we for either the gridded application or the point source application, we normalize an ERC or a BI to a percentile, and we combine them together into the severe fire danger index, which we categorize low, moderate, high, very high, and severe as a way of creating a system that can be easily anchored to a decision matrix. The way that we do it right now is we use the National Digital Forecast Database along with carryover dead fuel conditions from WIMS that are interpolated to produce an ERC and BI continuously across the country for a 7-day forecast. And then we normalize that forecast based on a historical gridded climatology. That allows us to produce a severe fire danger index forecast every day. If we look at the relationship between fire danger indices and fire activity, we see a very strong relationship between when and where new fires are reported or the eventual burned area is highest. And then also the lower panels are modus active fire. So the x-axis is the energy release component percentile, the y-axis is the burning index percentile. And these are plots for the entire country for all of CONUS from 1992 to 2017, and then for the MODIS from 2003 to 2016. But what you see is that everything's clustered in the upper right-hand corner, which is where the majority of these, where the majority of the fire activity happens. And then if we look at how categorically, when we combine those together in the severe fire danger index, we see a very steady increase in the per pixel FRP for MODIS, and then a very steady increase in the number of active fires detected as we increase in those categories. But why do we care? We care partly because improved predictions of these things help us anticipate extreme wildfire events. So one of these 5 forecasts were produced before any of these fires were reported. So the upper left-hand corner are the Santa Rosa fires, 2017. The upper center is the Thomas fire. Upper right is the Carr fire. The lower left is the Mendocino complex, and the lower right is the Camp fire. All of these forecasts show areas of severe conditions ahead of time. In some cases, several days ahead of time, to provide both communities and firefighters enough time to anticipate extreme conditions and plan for them. Because the other piece of this is the improved situational awareness for firefighters. So if we look at firefighter entrapments and fatalities over the last several years, we've been studying, we're building a database of firefighter entrapments and then comparing it to conditions on the days that they were entrapped. And what we found is that about 75% of all firefighter entrapments and fatalities happen when either the ERC or the BI was above the 90th percentile. And when we combine those together and we look at the severe fire danger index, the categorical index relationship in its relationship to firefighter entrapments, we see a steady increase in the number of firefighters and entrapment events, but a disproportionate increase in the number of firefighters that die on the fire line. So 62% of all firefighter fatalities happen on 3% of the fire weather days. These are 3% of the days that we can know ahead of time and forecast ahead of time and provide through an application to make sure that everyone knows that we're operating under those conditions for that day. If we look really quickly at what happened in 2020, we see, so these are severe fire danger index forecasts by day. And for a RAWS station adjacent to different events. So we had a shelter deployment on the Bridger Foothills fire, on the Dolan fire, which is part of the North Complex in Northern California, or sorry, the Bear Fire, which is part of the North Complex in Northern California, the Dolan fire in Southern California, and in the El Dorado fire, we had a firefighter fatality. All 4 of those events happened on days that the severe fire danger index was rated as severe. And in the case of the Dolan fire, only 1 day out of all of last year was rated as severe at that place, and that was the day of a shelter deployment. So if we look at summarizing what we add on, we have more entrapment events, more firefighters entrapped, and another fatality in those red bars. So ultimately, all of the things that we talk about here about how soil moisture can improve fire danger rating and how fire danger rating can be provided to the community at large has a direct impact to people. So when we talk about soil moisture and wildfire, soil moisture is really a driver and a proxy and not a direct control. I say that because soil itself doesn't burn unless it's organic, but the soil moisture has direct influences on live fuel conditions. The soil moisture changes track seasonal changes in dead fuel moisture, so they become a proxy for those changes as well. And the way that we monitor them and map them can be incorporated back into fire danger rating systems to improve the fuel moisture modeling and subsequently the way that we rate the hazards. And ultimately, we need to focus on how soil moisture can impact these conditions and where are the appropriate direct drivers of things that actually control fire activity so that we can anchor back to those in the future. So I'll stop there.